Welcome to DP Law classes, where we found that most of our subscribers and viewers belong to technical and professional courses. So, in that connection, we would like to discuss the Apprentice Act of 1961. So, in the very introduction and analysis of the Act, will deal regarding Central Apprenticeship Council and State Apprenticeship Council, then apprenticeship contracts, technical training, punishment of employees violating the very provisions of the Act of 1961 and the very amendment of 2017 which came into effect in 2018. Besides that, we will discuss about the benefits provided under the Apprentice Act 1961 such as financial security, job security, social security, education and training, then protection from exploitation by the employers, then those requirements to become an apprentice. Those seven important requirements, besides that, apprentice regulations, rights of the apprentice, penalties for violation of the act by the employers, then the most significant part relating to the amendment of 2017 which came into effect in 2018. So the Apprentice Act 1961 is an act of the Indian Parliament to regulate the training of apprentices in industry and matters connected therewith and for other purposes. The main objective of the Apprentice Act 1961 is to provide for the regulation of the training of apprentices in industry and to ensure that proper standards of training, wages, and other conditions are maintained. The Act also provides for the establishment of apprenticeship councils, which are responsible for the regulation and enforcement of the Act. So, now we would like to make a critical analysis with the very introduction that the Apprentices Act 1961 is an legislation made by the Indian Parliament to regulate the very employment of apprentices in certain trades or industries. As it was enacted in the year 1961 but come into effect in the year 1962. So the very Act provides for the regulation of the terms and conditions of apprenticeship contracts, including the minimum age at which a person can be an apprentice, the period of apprenticeship, the wages to be paid to apprentice, the maximum number of apprentices that may be employed in any trade, the protection of apprentice against unfair dismissal, and the right of apprentice to facilities for technical training. The Act also provides for the establishment of a central apprenticeship council and state apprenticeship councils to monitor and regulate the implementation of the various provisions of the Act. The main objectives of the Apprentice Act of 1961 as laid down to promote and develop the technical training of apprentices to ensure that the terms and conditions of apprenticeship contracts are fair and equitable, and to ensure that employers provide adequate facilities for the training of apprentices. The Act also provides for the punishment of employers who fail to comply with its provisions. So the Apprentice Act 1961 has been amended several times. Last time as the enactment was made in 2017 and came into effect in 2018 in order to make it more effective in achieving its objectives. The Act has been widely credited with helping to improve the quality of technical training in India and providing more opportunities for young people to acquire technical skill. So now we would like to discuss the various benefits of the Apprentice Act 1961. So, in particularly in the field of financial security, apprentices are provided with a minimum wage and other allowances such as travel and medical expenses to ensure that they are not exploited by their employers. This ensures that they are able to earn a decent wage while learning valuable skills in the field of technical training. Besides the first benefit, the second benefit is relating to job security. So the very act provides job security to apprentice wives, allowing them to work in particular trade or profession for a specified period of time. So it ensures that apprentices are able to complete their training without fear of losing their job due to employer changes or any kind of fluctuation in the job market. Besides that, the third benefit that is provided under the Act is relating to social security benefits, which are entitled to apprentices such as insurance and pension. This helps to ensure that apprentices are able to save and prepare for their future even while still in training. And the fourth important benefits provided to the apprentice under the Act is relating to education and training. So, every apprentice is provided with adequate education and training in the trade or profession they are learning. This helps to ensure that apprentices are able to learn all the necessary skills in order to become successful in their chosen field of trade or profession. Besides that, the last one that is the very most important relating to protection from exploitation. So, as per the provisions of the Act, it is to protect apprentices from exploitation by their employers, as it is provided penalties for employers who do not adhere to the very terms and conditions of the Act. And as per the agreement in between the apprentice and the employer, these benefits of the Apprentice Act of 1961 ensure that apprentices are able to learn valuable skills while also earning a decent wage and enjoying job security and social security benefits. Besides that, also it helps to ensure that apprentices are able to become successful in their selected chosen fields and trades and contribute accordingly to the growth of the national economy. Now we'll discuss about the very requirements as provided under the Act to become an apprentice. So, there are 7 important requirements as provided. So, let us discuss about the first most important requirement that is laid down under the Act, that is the applicant as an apprentice must be of legal age, and that is under the Act as prescribed, which is 14 years or above. And the second important requirement is that the applicant must have passed the prescribed educational qualification for the particular trade or profession or occupation for which apprenticeship is sought. The third requirement is that the applicant must be medical fit for the trade or profession or occupation for which apprenticeship is sought. The fourth legal requirement is that the employer must be registered as an employer under the Apprentice Act of 1961. And the fifth requirement is that the employer must submit a bond to the Government of India within a minimum amount of rupees 5,000 to guarantee the performance of the terms and conditions of the apprenticeship agreement between the employer and the apprentice. So the very sixth requirement is relating to an apprenticeship agreement must be entered into between the employer and the very applicant. The seventh most important and the last most legal requirement under the Act is that the employer must submit an application to the apprenticeship advisor, either center or of any state, for the grant of a certificate of apprenticeship. Once all these requirements are fulfilled, the employer and the applicant can enter into an apprenticeship agreement, and the apprenticeship advisor, either of the center or Union of India or of any state, will issue a certificate of apprenticeship to the apprentice. This certificate is valid for a period of 3 years and can be renewed for a further period of 3 years if the apprentice has diligently completed the period of apprenticeship training as it is provided under the Apprentice Act 1961. Now we'll discuss those apprenticeship regulations. So the Apprentice Act 1961 defines apprenticeship as the period during which a person is bound by a contract of apprenticeship to serve an employer as an apprentice and to learn a particular trade, occupation, or profession. Further, the Act says that any person who wishes to become an apprentice in any of the trades covered by the Act or any profession or occupation must enter into a contract of apprenticeship The contract must be signed by both the apprentice and the employer and must be registered with the apprentice advisor either of the Union of India or the central government or any of the state government. Further, the Act provides and laid down that certain regulations for the apprenticeship period. For example, the apprentice period must not be less than 2 years and not longer than 5 years. The apprentices must be provided with suitable tools and materials and must be instructed in the trade or profession or occupation they carried out. Further, they have the employee must also provide adequate accommodation, board, and lodging for the apprentice. Further, the Apprentice Act 1961 laid down responsibilities of the employer and the apprentice during the apprentice period. For instance, the employer must ensure that the apprentice is paid a stipend and the apprentice must submit to any reasonable instruction given by the employer. Further, it also outlines the very rights of apprentices. For example, the Act provided that the apprentice is entitled to receive a certificate upon completion of apprentice term. The certificate must be signed by both the employer and the apprentice. Furthermore, the Act also provides that the apprentice has the right to receive wages for overtime work and is entitled to receive compensation in the event of an accident. Finally, the Act also provides that any disputes arising out of the apprenticeship contract must be settled in accordance with the provisions of the Apprentice Act 1961. The Act also provides for the appointment of an apprentice advisor and apprenticeship council to advise either the central government or the state government on matters related to an apprenticeship. Overall, the Apprentice Act 1961 is an important piece of legislation that seeks to regulate the apprenticeship process in India. It provides for the rights and responsibilities of both the apprentice and the employer and ensures that the apprenticeship period is conducted in a safe and fair manner. Now we'll discuss another most important provisions of the Act relating to rights of the apprentices. As for the provisions of the Act, it regulates the relationship between the apprentice and the employer. It provides for the protection of the rights of the apprentice and also outlines the responsibilities of both the apprentice and the employer. So, as per the very provisions, as we would like to discuss, the very rights of apprentice with respect to payment. So, under the very Act of 1961, the employer is responsible for providing a stipend to the apprentice during the apprenticeship period. This stipend should be in proportion to the nature of the work that the apprentice is expected to do, either in the field of the chosen trade, occupation, or profession. The Act also provides that the apprentice shall receive a minimum stipend of rupees 75 per month, and the very important second right of apprentice is regarding to training. So, as per the provisions of the Act, the employer must provide the apprentice with regular and adequate training in accordance with the terms of the apprentice agreement. The employer must also ensure that the apprentice is provided with adequate instructional and practical facilities to the training. Further, the Act also provides that the employer must ensure that the apprentice is provided with suitable accommodation throughout the apprenticeship period. Apart from all these rights that we have discussed, the Act also provides that for certain duties of the apprentice. And regarding these duties, as provided under the Act, including punctual and regular in attendance, working with diligence, and in compliance with the instruction given by the employer, and maintaining good conduct throughout the apprentice period. And the very important piece of the legislation as the Apprentice Act 1961, which helps to protect the right of apprentices and also outlines their duties to their employers. It is important for both the employer and the apprentice to be aware of the various provisions of the Act of 1961 and its provisions, as it helps ensure that both the apprentice and the employer are protected. Now we'll discuss about the most important provision of the Act relating to penalties for violation of the very provisions of the Act of 1961. So, as the Act was enacted to regulate apprenticeship system in India and to ensure that employers are providing the necessary training and remuneration to their apprentices. So it is applicable to all employers throughout India and has been amended several times over the years. And one of the most important amendments made that came into effect in 2014, and that amendment provides framework for the training, registration, and employment of apprentices in establishment throughout India. And the very amendment outlines the requirements for employers to register and provide training for apprentices, and it also laid down the rights and responsibilities of apprentice. In addition to that also, it outlines the penalties that may be imposed for violation of any of the provisions of the Apprentice Act 1961. So, the penalties we could divide it into two categories. One is the civil penalties, and the second one is relating to criminal penalties. While civil penalties are imposed for violation of the Apprentices Act 1961 and can include fines, restitution, and or the suspension or revocation of the employer's apprenticeship registration. And these penalties are imposed while the court can be imposed with or without the consent of the employer. And as regarding the criminal penalties, as this is the second important penalties which may be imposed on an employer who violates the very provisions of the Apprentice Act 1961. These penalties can include fines, imprisonments, and or the cancellation of the employer's registration, as provided under the Apprentice Act 1961. Criminal penalties are imposed by also the court and can only be imposed with the very consent of the employer. It is important to note that the penalties for violations of the Apprentice Act 1961 vary depending on the severity of the violation. Besides that, employers who are found to be in violation of the provisions of the Act may also be subject to other legal actions such as civil lawsuits. It is important for the employers to understand the Apprentice Act 1961 and to ensure that they are in compliance with the Act. Failure to comply with the Apprentice Act 1961 can result in serious penalties, including fines, imprisonment, and or cancellation of the employer's registration. And now we'll discuss the various amendments, and in particularly the last amendment and the most vital amendment made in the year 2017. So the act, that is an act enacted by the Parliament of India, which regulates the training and apprenticeship of Indian apprentices either under the Central Council of Apprenticeship or the State Councils of Apprenticeship. Over the years, the Apprentice Act has been amended a number of times to keep up with the changing times and circumstances. Besides that, the very nature and consequences of different jobs, trades, occupations, and professions. The Apprentice Act 1961, as amended, provided certain new provisions such as the Act was amended to extend the very scope of apprenticeship to include all industries, including even the service sector. This means that employers in the service sector can now use the Apprentice Act to recruit and train apprentices. Further, the Amendment Act also includes a provision for voluntary registration of employers and apprentices. This means that employers and apprentices can register themselves with the apprenticeship authority in order to get the benefits as provided under the Act. Further, the amendment provide for the recognition of apprenticeship training and certification. And in particularly, it means that employers can now apply for recognition of their training and certification of apprentices. Further, the Act also provides under the amendment of 2017, which came into effect in 2018 by setting of a national apprenticeship promotion scheme. This scheme provides financial assistance to employers and apprentices for training and certification of apprentices. Further, the 2017 amendment also provided for the establishment of apprenticeship training institutes. These institutes are responsible for providing necessary training to the apprentices. Further, another major amendment made in 2017 which provides for the setting of an apprenticeship advisory board. This board is responsible for providing advice to apprenticeship authority on all matters related to an apprenticeship. In addition to these amendments, the Act has also been amended to provide for other provisions such as the setting of apprenticeship training institutes, the setting of apprenticeship training institute or setting of national apprenticeship promotion scheme, and the recognition of apprenticeship training and certification. These amendments to the Apprentice Act 1961, as it was made in the year 2017 and came into effect in the year 2018, are a step towards ensuring quality apprenticeship training in India and also in the various provinces or states in India and providing better opportunities regarding job to youth. Hopefully, these amendments will help strengthen the apprenticeship system in India and ensure that the apprentices are provided with the necessary skills and knowledge to succeed in the job market. So finally, we would like to conclude our valuable discussion on this very important act relating to technical training, technical education, technical occupation, trade or profession as provided under the Apprentice Act 1961. So, in regards to that, we have made a and critical analysis of the Act as per the provisions provided regarding constitution of Central Apprenticeship Council and State Apprenticeship Councils and the apprenticeship contract risk between the employer and the apprentices. The provisions relating to technical training, punishment of the employers, and the important amendment that was enacted in 2017 and came into effect in 2018. Also, we have discussed the various benefits of the Act as regarding financial security, job security, social security, education and training, protection from exploitation. Then those requirements to become an apprentice. And there are almost 7 important requirements as provided under the Act. Then we have discussed regarding apprenticeships regulations as provided under the Act and also under the amendments. Then rights of the apprentices as provided under the Act and through the various amendments from 2014 to 2018. Besides that, also we have discussed about the penalties could be imposed on the employer for violation of any of the provisions of the Apprentice Act 1961. Besides that, in length and detail, we have discussed the various new provisions inserted to the original act, that is the Apprentice Act 1961, by the amendment of 2017, which came into effect in 2018.